Okay, I've got 5:01. Let's go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Caitlin Saposi-Belknap. I'm National Director of Move to Amend. I live in Eureka, California, which is far northern California, almost to the Oregon border. And thanks for being here this evening. We're going to go ahead and do this webinar on an introduction to Move to Amend. So if you're having any technical issues during the webinar, I apologize in advance. We're not in a position to do tech support during the webinar just because I'm focused on the content. But this webinar is being recorded, and the recording and the slides will be available on our website, and we'll also send that to everyone who registered. So if you miss anything, there will be a recording. You can catch it later. So I'm going to talk tonight about a quick overview of Move to Amend and our projects that we're working on this year and some of our ongoing volunteer opportunities, and answer any questions that you have, and then I'll let you know how you can stay plugged in. And if you have questions along the way, you can chat them on the bottom left-hand side of your screen. There's a note that says type your message here, a little box, and you can chat your questions to me. I will probably take most of them at the end. If I see something that's kind of clarifying in nature, I will try to grab it as we go. So just feel free to type them as we go, and then I'll go back through them at the end. And I wanted to really quickly just get a sense of who's here and do a quick poll. Works. So on your screen shortly, you should see a few questions. If you could let me and others know what your involvement with Move to Amend is by choosing the one that best answers it for you. And you can see as we go the number. Okay, there we go, getting more answers. So it looks like almost all of you are brand new and not active yet. So that's great. Welcome, and thanks for being here. And this is the webinar for you. All right, so let me give you a little bit of background about Move to Amend. We're a coalition of hundreds, at this point actually thousands of organizations and hundreds of thousands of individuals committed to social and economic justice, ending corporate rule, and building a vibrant democracy that is genuinely accountable to the people, not corporate interests. And our main goal this time is to pass the We the People Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. That amendment makes clear that artificial entities like corporations or nonprofit corporations do not have constitutional rights, and that money is not speech, which would allow us to regulate spending in the political process. Our other goal is to provoke discussion and organizing around how to make real the promise of American democracy through constitutional renewal. So it's our position that the We the People Amendment is actually kind of just the beginning of the kind of constitutional change that we need to see. Our principles and values are anti-oppression and solidarity organizing. And for us, that means that we need to understand the system that we're operating in. It's not actually really an accident that we're in a situation where private property, aka corporations and the people who own them, are wielding the legal system against us and own most of the planet. That is the outgrowth of a country that was set up with an emphasis on private property and actually making human beings property. And if not property, then a system rooted in genocide as well. And so we need to really unpack all of that to understand where we are now and how deep this problem goes. From our perspective, solidarity organizing is also the answer to that. There are so many issues that we are trying to address to make our world better, and our work is to connect all of those movements into a democracy movement for power. And that kind of moves us into point number 2, coalition and movement building. Our belief is that the only way that massive structural change like the We the People Amendment is possible is through movements, and that's how our Constitution has been amended before, and that's really what's needed. So to that end, you'll see us focusing on working with other organizations, expanding our base, doing education work, and not necessarily targeting Washington, D.C., at least not at this time. And we prioritize grassroots organizing because in our communities, in relationship with each other and the people who are our neighbors, who we live with, who we work with, who we do fun things with as well, that is how we actually bring about cultural shifts. And so Move to Amend is structured around a grassroots structure. We have local groups all over the country. I'll talk about that in a minute. And we do grassroots organizing because really the only way to build a movement like the one we need is from the ground up. We have a dedication to political education, and I've kind of already touched on this in some ways. It's really important that we unpack and understand what got us into the situation that we're in now, and understand that, it didn't begin with Citizens United. It didn't begin with George Bush taking office or whatever kind of recent landmark you want to look at. Actually, there are many layers that have built up the doctrine of corporate constitutional rights and money is speech, and it's also not just a legal problem. It's a political power problem in this country. And so understanding that and doing education, self-education, and then mass education is part of what's necessary for winning. And we need to have political and economic independence. We need to make sure that we are funded by, not the foundations that are owned by the wealthy, whose agenda is not necessarily to completely change the balance of power. We need to not be obviously corporate funded. So Move to Amend is funded by individuals. Almost all of our donations come from individual people, and the average amount is $40. And we're really proud of that, and that's something we'll continue. But also we need to have political independence. We need to be willing to break free from political parties that might be tied to a corporate system, and also the nonprofit structure itself also oftentimes lends itself to kind of just continuing on versus actually winning and putting ourselves out of business. And so we need to have that kind of independence on both of those fronts to make sure that we can see clear to where we need to go. So a quick reminder on how to amend the Constitution. It requires 2/3 of both houses of Congress, the House and the Senate, to pass a bill or an amendment resolution. And then 3/4 of the states, either through their legislatures or through conventions of the states, have to ratify the amendment resolution. The other option that's in the Constitution is for a constitutional convention or a convention of the states. And the way that would happen is 2/3 of state legislatures call for a convention to propose amendments, and then 3/4 of the states still have to ratify any amendment that comes out of that convention process. It's worth noting that to date, all amendments that have passed, all 27 amendments that we have, including all of the ones in the Bill of Rights, happened through the Congress option. However, we believe that it's important that we not rule out the convention option, because the odds of Congress all by themselves without any pressure from the states deciding to pass an amendment like ours is probably pretty slim. So we actually need to be looking at kind of both prongs of the strategy, and it's our opinion that deciding whether we should really go for the Congress route or the convention route is actually not a decision that needs to be made yet, because really we would need a democratic movement for either of those to be successful. And so our work right now is the same, which is to build a mass movement. And we can decide later whether we will, go for both all along the way, or basically abandon the Congress strategy and just go for the convention strategy. So right now we're focusing on building a movement. Our amendment has been introduced in Congress, both the last Congress and this Congress. So we're basically on the path towards not ruling out either option. As I said, our primary target is the American people, not Congress, and to focus on movement building for power. And to that end, we're working on coalition building, reaching out to other organizations that are working on issues that are affected by corporate power, which is almost every single issue, and making the connections for why passing a structural change like the We the People Amendment would further all of our work. It's important that this movement be broad and diverse, specifically multiracial and intergenerational. Those are two areas where if we don't put special attention, then we're likely to be unsuccessful, because this is a very segregated country. We actually don't learn how to effectively work across racial lines and generational lines, and every successful movement that has done something as large as amend the Constitution has been multiracial and intergenerational. And those who are most affected by a corporate rule are the folks who are most likely to be the front lines of this movement. And so it's important that we make sure that our amendment work is relevant to them and involves their leadership. We like to talk about community organizing versus activism, and that's not to say that there's anything wrong with activism, but to us what we're drawing out by saying community organizing is that organizing is about relationships. It's about building power and capacity. And so it's not about just turning everybody out to a march or getting 100,000 petitions on an online petition and nothing actually gets built out of that in a lasting way. It's about building relationships, and so that those petitions actually represent people who are engaged and involved, or the people who come to the march, next weekend are the same ones who will be involved in, door knocking the week later. And so remembering that this is really about contesting for democratic power in this country, and so the means need to match up with the ends that we want. And especially in this world of kind of clicktivism and kind of flash in the pan social media work, not that that's not important for getting attention, but we need to actually be building relationships so that the work actually lasts and results in power. And again, we focus on grassroots organizing, and our main tactic that we have been employing to date has been passing local and state resolutions calling for an amendment. And those resolutions have either been passed through city councils or county commissions or sometimes state legislatures, or through the ballot initiative process in states and communities that allow citizens to directly vote on legislation that they would like to see happen. And the reason why we have put so much emphasis on that tactic is that it is a great way to make ourselves known. So the resolutions campaigns that we have done since our launch in 2010 have really put us on the map, and we've had over 600 local resolutions pass. Over 200 communities have done that through the ballot box. We have won every single time it's been on the ballot. And, of course, it's not just about getting a large number of resolutions, because that in and of itself doesn't necessarily result in a constitutional amendment. But if those numbers represent communities that are organized and engaged and on record, we can use that fact to go to our state and federal representatives and point out that their constituents want this amendment. It certainly put us on the radar of a lot of state and local media, and it's a lot of what has brought in the supporters that we have in Move to Amend so far. So If your community hasn't yet passed a resolution, thinking about how that might be where you get to. It's not the smallest project to start with, so it's not what I would recommend for your beginning piece. But the communities that have passed these resolutions have really built effective organizations out of these campaigns. We also have a project called Pledge to Resist, which is, at this point, a pledge that's sort of just standing. We don't have a target yet per se, although as we're going into a presidential election year, it may make a lot of sense for us to engage in nonviolent civil disobedience around the electoral process itself, not necessarily even any one candidate, but just what we're seeing with the election process and money in politics and corporate control of politics. So it's a pledge to engage in nonviolent civil disobedience. And if you haven't taken the pledge, and this is something that you would be willing to do, please, you can't click the link on your screen, but you can make a note of it or refer to it when you get the slides and sign up for our pledge. And then we will let you know as we have actions that you could engage in. Another pledge is a pledge for elected officials. So a focus on office holders, not just at the federal and state level, but also the local level, because the people who are in office in city councils and county government now are most likely the ones to be in office, in the next 5 to 10 years at the state and federal level. It's an opportunity to educate elected officials and to ask them to take a pledge to support the We the People Amendment. If they're at the state or federal level, then they actually can support legislation. And if they're at the local level, then it's a pledge of support for the We the People Amendment and to use their office to educate and to support the campaign. So that might be passing a local resolution through their city council, or it might mean being a co-sponsor on our We the People Amendment in the House, for example. It also is a way for us as Move to Amend supporters to learn how to effectively lobby our elected officials and to build relationships with them. It puts pressure on them to take a position, and a great time to do that is in an election year. And we just had the August recess recently, and we had folks setting up meetings. We also have one of our national folks who's in D.C. now, so it allows us to, when pledges are secured for federal legislators and they haven't become co-sponsors of the We the People Amendment, it gives us a sense of that they're moving in our direction, but they're not all the way there. So we also then kind of shore up that support on the national level when it's achieved at the local level. Some of the easy things that you can do that you don't necessarily have to have an organized group is bring together your friends and neighbors, and you can either fundraise for Move to Amend or just engage in education and spreading the word. We have a 30-minute film called Legalized Democracy that you can get on DVD or see on YouTube for free, and you can show that as a great way to give an introduction to Move to Amend and then have discussion. This is also a great way to get a Move to Amend group started. And so oftentimes a Move to Amend group will come out of a house party where you'll show Legalized Democracy, have a discussion, and then folks who are excited and inspired to stay involved go from there. If you would like, we could also do a conversation through the internet with one of our national team members. So if you want to show the film and then have a speaker, if we're not nearby you, if we are nearby, we can come in person, but if we're not, then we could do it through an online presentation and answering questions, and again, giving people an opportunity to learn how they can engage and get their questions answered. So at these house parties, you can collect donations, you could collect petitions, and potentially start a new group. Stampede to Amend is another project that you can do either on your own or with a group of other folks. It's a project to stamp your money or your outgoing mail. For example, we stamp all of our outgoing mail going out of our office with messages calling for an amendment. So the most popular stamp that we use is "Corporations are not people, money is not speech, move-to-amend.org." And this was a project that we actually launched in partnership with Ben Cohen of Ben & Jerry's Ice Cream a few years ago. And he's started a spin-off group that just focuses on creating stamps and getting money stamped. But it's a way to get the word out, and it can be a fun thing to do, kind of on your own. And we always love it when our dollars come back and somebody in our network finds one that they stamped coming back to them and shows that it's circulating around. But you could also hold a stamp-in and get a group of folks. You could do it, tabling at the farmers markets, or you could do it, have a party at your house and everybody bring, 100 ones and everybody stamp them together, and then spread the word that way. It's an easy and simple way to get the message out, and I always like telling folks the story of one of our awesome interns. We have a great internship program and training program for young people on organizing, and one of our interns in our last cohort came to us because her husband brought home a $20 bill that was stamped with one of our messages. So it definitely helps get the word out and bring people into our cause. And we sell the stamps on our website, and that's a link to where you can get them if you don't already have one. And a kind of ongoing goal is to recruit more people into Move to Amend, and the main way we do that is through what we call the Motion to Amend. It's our online petition. It's what we launched Move to Amend with back in 2010 on the day of the Citizens United decision, and we collected, tens of thousands of signatures online in the first couple days of launching, and that was how we knew that there was interest in really doing this campaign. And it's not an official formal petition like you would sign to get something on the ballot. It's an organizing tool to bring people in to Move to Amend. So if you're not sure how to get started and you're maybe not ready to form a group, or you don't have a group of folks to launch with, you can begin by just collecting signatures to recruit people in to Move to Amend. So you can send an email to everyone you know and share the link. You can bring the paper petition, which you can print off from our website, to the places where you go, like work or school or church or any other meetings that you attend. You can also, put it on the clipboard and take it to community events or in front of the grocery store. And there are some folks that this is the way that they engage with Move to Amend. Maybe they're not group folks, or maybe they live in an area where they don't have a critical mass for an affiliate, but they just help recruit people in to Move to Amend. And that's also a great way to identify other people in your community. If you don't have friends yet who would want to start a group with you, then you could just collect petitions and find new people who are interested in Move to Amend. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our structure here. You can plug in at the national level with Move to Amend through our national committees, and there's a list of them there and on the website. And so if you have a particular skill set, if you're retired and you've done work in some of these areas, or you're a student and you have time and are interested in learning about these areas, or if this is just the way that you would want to volunteer, you can join our national committees. Most of the time we encourage folks to either join one of our local, what we call affiliate groups, or to start one on their own. But sometimes it makes sense for folks to engage directly in the national work. And so the way to do that is through our committees, and we have an application process for that. It is a bit of a time commitment, and there's limited positions. But if you are interested in checking those out, I encourage you to do that. We also have what we call caucuses and working groups. These are a little bit less formal than the national committees, and again are kind of targeted for folks who are working in a particular area, and that's their passion and interest. So we have an Interfaith caucus for folks who, people of faith, to help create materials and resources for our local organizers to reach out to people of faith, of all different faiths, and to explain why, in a faith-based context, we need the We the People Amendment. We have an Arts and Culture Caucus for artists and cultural workers, and that's newly forming. And we have a caucus for folks who are either involved with now or retired from the labor movement. And you can find information about each of those and details about how you could join those caucuses if these are areas where you have interest, or if you have friends who this would describe them, then I would encourage you to ask them to check out the caucuses. So again, there's a number of resources. I kind of went through several of them, but as you're getting started, some of the best parts of our website to check out, there's a lot of information on our website, so I'd encourage you to take a look at these resources in particular. Our petition, which I've already mentioned, as a great way to just begin recruiting people in and doing a huge service for Move to Amend by doing that. We have a whole toolkit of materials to help support you as you're getting started in taking action. And so you can find that at movetoamend.org/toolkit. There's a page on how to affiliate and what an affiliate is and what their responsibilities are and what affiliates, how affiliates interface with the national organization. All of that is spelled out, as well as an application for affiliation on the affiliation page. If you haven't already signed up on the volunteer sign-up page, that is a good thing to do, and one of our interns will give you a call and begin to talk about how we can help you get involved. So if you're not sure where to start, then signing up on the volunteer sign-up page will get you a phone call. There's also a place at the end of this webinar for you to give us some feedback, and you can also let us know if you'd be interested in getting a phone call, and we'll follow up and have a one-on-one conversation with you. And we have a movement education program that everybody in Move to Amend participates in, and gives a history of social movements and lessons learned, as well as some training in solidarity organizing and an anti-oppression framework to help make for better organizers. So you can find that on our website as well. So that's kind of the quick overview about Move to Amend, and I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have now, which you can chat on the lower left-hand side of your screen, and be happy to do my best to answer them. Let's see. Stefan from Seattle asks, what can you say to inspire some optimism? It seems like a very high bar. The ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment, was expected to pass, didn't seem controversial, yet it never really came close to succeeding. Yeah, it's true, Stefan, that this isn't a small task that we're embarking on. So some of the things that inspire me to feel as though this is doable is to think about how the Constitution has been amended before, and not just in bureaucratic ways, in some fundamental ways that completely shifted and changed the whole country, not just the legal system. So ending slavery, which sometimes folks don't like that example because of the Civil War that also was involved, but the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments that the abolitionist movement was able to get passed, the folks who were calling for an end to slavery were calling for not just changing the entire economic system, but just the whole idea of who a human being was. And initially, when they started their struggle, that was seen as ludicrous and crazy. And they were able to accomplish those three amendments without the internet, without even telephones to organize. And if you want to look at another example that didn't require a civil war, the suffrage movement, the amendment that gave women the right to vote, which was 70 years in the making and required perseverance across generations, and again, folks willing to put their bodies on the line, to stand out in the cold in front of the White House, to do hunger strikes when they were arrested and in jail, struggling for their amendment, and yet they saw through. So we're not naive about what it's going to take to get this passed, but when we have been in situations that have been so clearly, where it's been so clearly necessary for us to change the fundamental laws to follow culture, and it's happened, and it's been done. And it hasn't just, happened because that was what needed to happen. It's because people spent years of their lives organizing to make it the case. And 80% of the American public agree with this amendment. They agree that corporations should not have the same rights as people. They agree that money in elections should be regulated. And so we're starting from a great place. The suffrage movement didn't have 80% of people agreeing that women were equal people. They had to, wrestle that to get the support that they got. And so we're starting from a great place. It's a matter of connecting with the American people, letting them know that this movement exists, and holding our elected officials accountable, and really making this a litmus test issue. If you want to be in office, then you have to support making sure that this is the government of the people, not of the corporations. And I think that it is so necessary that it is entirely possible. We talk about it on a 10-year timeline. If we can move faster than that, by all means, then we will. But we also need to be real about, how far from a democracy this country is. And yet we've seen tremendous growth in the last 5 years. I've been working on corporate constitutional rights for the last 15 years of my life, and it's only in the last 5 years when we launched Move to Amend, because of the Citizens United decision, that this is now on the radar of, really the Daily Show, and, mass culture actually is talking about this. And so while it may seem that we don't have 10 years to spare, given our environmental situation, and we will go as fast as we can. On the other hand, we've made tremendous growth in the last 5 years, and we're continuing to do so. And so I think it's just a matter of reaching enough people and cutting through the cynicism, because people know what kind of change we need, and they don't believe that it's possible. And so that's why it's so important when folks step forward and begin to do the work of engaging their fellow community members, because that's what inspires people to believe that change is possible. Let's take some other questions or comments. James from Cedar Park, Texas, says, is Move to Amend involved with other organizations trying to democratize the creation of money, public banking movements, sovereign money movements, modern monetary theory movements, etc.? We have partnered before with the Public Banking Institute, and we can continue to do so. We don't have any projects with them on the horizon right now, but certainly kind of getting to our second goal about constitutional renewal and looking at the systems that prop up our current system of corporate rule. The financial system is very much part of that, just like the legal system. And so, yes, we have partnered with those kinds of groups before and would be open to doing that again in the future. Let's see. James also points out that the Greens have put this in their party platform, and that's true. Actually, well before Citizens United, because this issue goes back actually, well before Citizens United. So it's true that it is in the Green Party platform, and increasingly, actually, local Democratic Party and even Libertarian Party folks have considered putting it in their state platforms, but a number of state party Democratic parties have put a call for the We the People Amendment in their platforms as well. It's a matter of then forcing the national to follow the local. Valerie from San Francisco asks, who would you define as the group most affected by corporate rule? I don't think that there's any group that's like the most affected over others. I think it's a matter of making the connections for how different people are affected by corporate rule in different ways. There's also no one way that we are. Most of the time it's multiple ways. So what I mean by folks who are connected, affected by corporate rule would be, for example, anybody who has family members who have gone to jail or been in prison. The school-to-prison pipeline and the mass incarceration of Americans in private prisons, making those kinds of connections. And obviously, we know that Black and brown folks are completely disproportionately sent to prison and convicted of crimes, even the same crimes as white folks. And so those Black and brown folks in this case would be, disproportionately affected by corporate rules. So that would be, one example. But there's also, all kinds of examples of environmental impacts and corporations being able to skirt environmental laws or avoid environmental laws being passed through lobbying, through suing communities that try to pass environmental regulations and claim that those environmental regulations violate their constitutional rights. And again, the people who are disproportionately affected by that are low-income people and people of color, and also young people are disproportionately affected by the situation with student debt and the connection to banks and privatization of universities. And so making these connections, depending on who you're talking to and what communities you're working with, is so much of our educational work. Let's see. Marcos from San Jose asks, maybe you already addressed this, but will we have access to the presentation slides? Yes. Our webinars are always recorded, and the slides are available on the page on our site where the recording is. So that'll all be up tomorrow, and then we'll send an email to everyone who's registered for this webinar. Stefan from Seattle asks, might something regarding this ever be in front of the Supreme Court? So it is true that kind of the other option besides amending the Constitution would be for the court to reverse its position on the two doctrines that the court has created and are now, really part of the legal system beyond just the Supreme Court, the two doctrines being corporate constitutional rights and money is speech. And there have been examples of the court changing their position. Probably the one that we know the best is the doctrine of separate but equal, which also was created by the Supreme Court. And the Brown versus the Board of Education case where the Supreme Court reversed its position and decided that actually separate but equal was not a thing, and it was a violation of the 14th Amendment. So that is not a strategy that Move to Amend is interested in employing for a number of different reasons. One, the only reason why the court reversed its position on segregation is because of the civil rights movement, and it took a massive movement in order to basically create the cultural conditions that made the court's previous ruling untenable. And so either way, we're going to have to build a social movement. And it is much more secure for us to actually amend the Constitution and kind of once and for all make clear that inalienable rights only belong to human beings, not any entity created by government. And the only way to really settle it is to put it in the Constitution. And if we leave it up to the courts, then it's vulnerable to be changed again. And also, it's just extremely unlikely that the folks who are in the makeup of the Supreme Court generally, even if you're talking about, folks appointed by, say, Democratic presidents, would be willing to go back on this decision, because at this point these doctrines are so entrenched in the legal system, and lawyers are so, especially at the federal level, so committed to them that it's really unlikely that we're going to get relief there. So it's really time for us to put the Supreme Court in its place. They basically amended the Constitution themselves by creating these doctrines and inserting corporations into the Constitution, and by finding that spending money in the political process is part of the First Amendment. And so we need to undo that and not look to them to do it. We need to do it ourselves so that it's lasting and not interpreted in a minor way after a court were to maybe change their position. Marcos from San Jose asks, how has the Interfaith Caucus managed to reach organized religious groups? I'm a Catholic and could see my church opposing the idea of limiting the influence of artificial entities because it might limit their own influence. Generally, how do such established organized groups respond to the idea of move to amend? So it kind of depends. The Interfaith Caucus originally started with folks who were Unitarians, although now they're reaching out to other sectors of the religious community and congregations. The main argument that really kind of makes sense in a faith context is that, so if you think about inalienable rights, and the idea that we have rights just because we're human beings. And in fact, even some of our founding documents in this country talk about how those rights come from God. So the idea that government, which is who creates corporations, has any kind of authority to infuse the rights of people that come from God into artificial entities created by government is a total disconnect, and it's actually pretty blasphemous. And so using that argument to explain why corporate constitutional rights is against people's faith is basically the work of the Interfaith Caucus. And there are some issues that sometimes churches have around, being artificial entities themselves. However, I think, when that kind of conversation is provoked in a congregation, most people kind of agree and understand the logic. Because, again, 80% of Americans, it doesn't matter whether we're talking about conservatives or liberals, most people agree with this. And so that's the work that we're trying to do in the Interfaith Caucus, and would welcome folks from other denominations or aspects of Christianity beyond what we have now to join us in that conversation and to think about how to do this, whether it's with sermons or educational materials or having meetings with the congregation's leadership. Those are the things that we're trying. So I encourage you, Marcus, to check out the Interfaith Caucus and contact us about that if you'd be interested in bringing this conversation to other Catholics that you know. Let's see. I want to see if there's anybody else. Ben from San Diego says, are there any developments regarding endcitizensunited.org since the ominous email you guys sent some 2 months ago? Any possibility of partnering with them? It appears that they are doing more than fundraising, but supporting candidates who would help the cause. Reamendment ultimately required Congress to initiate. Yeah, so a few things there. I personally have talked directly with folks at endcitizensunited.org, and in all honesty, I don't see a lot of potential for us to partner with them. They still pretty much are just doing fundraising, and their tactic of sending like 12 emails in a day or whatever it is definitely wearing on people. So it's not something that we really want to be associated with at all. As it is, we still run into a lot of people who confuse us and them and get impatient with us because they think that we're spamming them all day long. And I talked to them about that, and they said that they have no plans to change that course. And then also they're specifically focused on getting Democrats reelected in this next election. And that, there are some of the Democrats that they have been working with who are co-sponsors of our amendment and, who are good legislators, but Move to Amend is very explicit about being nonpartisan because actually this issue is not a partisan issue, and by taking it partisan, we lose folks who we wouldn't need to lose. And so we're also unlikely to partner with an organization that is exclusively using this issue to elect people of a particular party. And unfortunately, I don't have a lot of and Citizens United is still going to exist or exist in the same way. They're really using this issue, which, as we've talked about, has so much broad support and is something that really is a good motivator for folks to to forward the agenda of electing Democrats to office. And prioritizing ending Citizens United is kind of just the initial draw, as far as I can tell. And I'm on their list, so I see all the emails about, the Koch brothers and all of that, but it doesn't seem like it's really about building a lasting movement. It's kind of a flash-in-the-pan situation, which unfortunately is going to be part of this process along the way, folks kind of trying to take advantage and opportunize on the appeal of ending Citizens United, and it's part of our work, all of us, to make sure that we really help explain the situation and kind of cut through the proposals that might not actually be ending corporate constitutional rights. So that's another piece of all this, that ending Citizens United, overturning Citizens United, will not end corporate constitutional rights in and of itself. And if we just go back to the politics of 2009, when corporations still ran our elections and our political process and our legal system, we need to take this opportunity to actually systemically solve the problem, not just put a Band-Aid on it. So ending Citizens United is not our agenda, and that was part of the conversation that I had with their lead person about whether their agenda was to end corporate constitutional rights, because we were pretty frustrated that was the rhetoric they were using, and yet that was not really what it would appear that they were going to do. And she concurred that their agenda is simply to overturn Citizens United, not to end corporate constitutional rights, despite some of their rhetoric. So that would be another reason why we're very clear that you will never find Move to Amend's name or endorsement or support for any measure that does not both end corporate constitutional rights and money is speech. And that's one of the ways that we pledge to help give clarity for anybody who's wondering whether a proposal will actually do what needs to be done, is that if it has Move to Amend's name on it, they can count on that. And if it doesn't, then probably good to be skeptical. And I would encourage folks to go to our website and look under our other amendments section, which is you can find in the amendment section of the website, and you can kind of see the different proposals that have been proposed in Congress and how they measure up to the We the People amendment. James says, thank you for not sending me 12 emails a day like so many other organizations. You're welcome. We have a lot of things that we want to let folks know. So, we do send emails generally weekly, but we definitely are very conscientious about, just overwhelming people and turning people off, and also just not having real substance in our emails. So we actually try to make sure that there's a lot of analysis and information, and when we direct folks to do an action, that it actually is a powerful action, not just a click here to sign your name. So I hope that's coming through. That's our agenda for sure. Let's see. Just looking for any other questions. Stefan asks, how do you market yourselves any advertising? Well, our budget is currently around $400,000. That's our goal each year, and we have 9 staff, and we do that budget is tiny compared to other organizations that are doing just kind of a fraction of what we're doing. So I wish that we had funds for advertising, but at this time we don't explicitly. A lot of how the word gets spread about Move to Amend is word of mouth. Our local affiliates doing campaigns, earned media, meaning getting stories about Move to Amend either at the local or national level, or letters to the editor and op-eds and things like that. We do have a social media presence as well. So currently that is what we engage in, and if we have more funds, then we will definitely be able to branch out even further. Let's see. Jonas from San Francisco asks, have any congressional sponsors been approached? Yes, so we have 9, I believe that's the current number, sponsors of our amendment in the House. So the We the People amendment has been introduced in the House of Representatives. Each Congress, all past resolutions that haven't passed expire, and so our amendment will need to be reintroduced every new Congress until it is passed and ratified. And so it was introduced a few years ago and only had a small, just a couple co-sponsors. We really weren't focusing on Congress yet and didn't know if we even wanted it introduced in Congress because we didn't want folks to be derailed from the grassroots strategy. But we had a representative who really wanted to be the first one to introduce it and was from a state where we had done a lot of grassroots work, Minnesota. So Rick Nolan is our lead sponsor, and then he introduced it again in this new Congress. And we have picked up 6 new co-sponsors this year so far. And that's been the result of our Pledge to Amend work by our local affiliates. So getting their House representatives to pledge to support the amendment and then coming on as co-sponsors as a result of those pledges. And if you go to movetoamend.org/amendment, you can see who the rest of the co-sponsors are. I don't believe that San Francisco House Rep is co-sponsor because I don't think you guys are in Jared Huffman's district. Yes, people are using Twitter and Facebook. That you can find us on both of those 2 social media channels. Let's see, James from Cedar Park, Texas, and I think this might be the last question, so last call if there are any other questions. Please go ahead and type them in. James says, I'd like to donate to organizations, but if I start a monthly donation, I'm afraid on how do I stop? How do y'all handle that? Thanks for the Texas drawl. I'm Dallas-born myself, so I say y'all all the time. So you can, would encourage all of you to follow James's lead and interest and become a monthly donor to Move to Amend. And if you ever need to stop the donation, that's easy to do. You can do that through our website. We have a donation support page, or you can call our office, and our financial and donation administrator would be happy to take you off. So that's a lot of the work that he does every day. But you can easily become a monthly donor, and you can easily stop if you ever need to. And I promise that it's easy. So if you go to movetoamend.org/donate, you can see the options there, including the monthly donation option. And James or anyone else on this call, if you become a monthly donor, thank you so much in advance. We really appreciate your support. And Stefan from Seattle says, do you have a list of the local affiliates? Yes. If you go to the Move to Amend website, let me see if I can really quickly share my screen. This looks like, oh, there it is. So yeah, they're all listed on the Move to Amend website. And oops, there's my messy desktop. So you go to movetoamend.org, and right here under, oops, hold on one sec. It looks like the screen sharing isn't coming through quite yet for all the rest of you. Go ahead. Can you all see my screen? You can chat on the side if you can. Oh, looks like it's not working. It might be. I can't really tell. Oh, there it goes. Messy desktop. Sorry for the delay. Sometimes this endeavor is the hardest thing for the webinar service to do. So here's our website, and over there on the left where it says MTA Coalition, there is a drop-down. that should be dropping down any moment here. And a number of the things that I referenced are in it. So this is where you can find the national committees. This is where you can find the caucuses, so like the Interfaith Caucus, and then also a list of the local Move to Amend affiliate groups. And again, it's still going really slow, so it looks like it's probably not showing for you all, but that's the part of our website where you can find all the information about us. And the part over here on the right is where you can make a donation, including a monthly donation. All right, there. Now it's finally showing up. So I encourage you to check out our website after this webinar and explore. And if you want to volunteer and click on that volunteer sign-up form, you can do that under Get Involved. And again, that will let us know that you want to plug in, and we can give you a follow-up phone call and talk about how you can get more involved. So let me just bring my slides back here. We were almost done. I'll check one more time just to make sure there's no additional questions. All right. Let's see. Okay. Yeah. Sorry that the website was so slow on the webinar. It's not slow in real life. It's just when I'm doing the screen sharing, it doesn't work that great. Okay. I'm not sure if I was in the picture that showed, but I am on the staff list. Again, my name is Caitlin. And we do have a podcast. We have a weekly podcast on Thursdays called Move to Amend Reports. And you can find it in the media section of the website. And we have guests from the larger democracy movement, and we have a report from the national office every week. And yeah, that's a great way to continue to stay involved beyond just the emails. All right. We have not been, it looks like one other question here from Ben in San Diego is asking if we use change.org. We don't use those websites at this time because oftentimes they're actually a way to recruit names, and then those names get sold to other organizations. And so we just use our petition and our petition on Facebook just because, as you may have gathered, we really kind of have an ethic against people's emails being spammed and helping to facilitate people's emails getting shared all around. And so we keep our stuff all in-house, and hopefully and then folks sharing it with their friends is how we spread the word and how we've got to almost 400,000 signatures. All right, last question on the podcast. It is on iTunes. It's not on Stitcher as far as I know. I actually haven't heard of that before, but you can find Move to Amend reports on iTunes or directly through our podcast interface that we use, which is Blog Talk Radio. So next steps. There's a survey here at the end if you could give me your feedback on how this webinar worked for you, and also you can let us know if you'd like a follow-up phone call or if there's any additional questions you have that we can answer. You can always contact us directly by emailing info@movetoamend.org or calling us at 707-269-0984. We're going to take a little break from webinars for the next couple months as we're closing out the year, and our next webinar will be January 6th, and we will unveil our 2016 plans and how you can get involved. So encourage you, though, not to wait until then. If you have been thinking about getting started with Move to Amend, then please contact us before January, and let's figure out how to plug you in. And let me just run through here real quick to let Jonas, there is a San Francisco affiliate. I'm sure they would love to connect with you if you're not already connected with them. You can find them on our website. Marcos, we have an affiliate in San Jose, and I'm sure they would love to hear from you if you don't already know them. Stefan, we have an affiliate in Seattle, and they're working on the WAMEN campaign, and which is a ballot initiative for the state of Washington, and they would love to have your involvement in that. I know they need to collect a ton more signatures before the end of the year to get their initiative on the ballot. Thomas, we have an affiliate in Portland, Oregon, and it looks like Valerie, you're in San Francisco as well. And I'm not totally sure where some of these other spots are. There might be affiliates near you. But again, if not, then it would be great to connect. For example, Ben and Randy, you guys are both in San Diego. Maybe we could connect you with the other folks in San Diego who have expressed interest in getting an affiliate started, but we haven't quite got there yet. And y'all could be the critical mass to help get a group started in San Diego, for example. So anybody who wants to stay involved, please just let us know when you fill out the survey that you'd like a phone call, and then let's talk about how we can make it happen. All right. Looks like that's a wrap. If there's any other questions that I didn't catch, if I missed them for some reason, make sure to put them in the survey feedback as well, and we'll follow up with you. So thanks again so much for being here tonight. I hope that we'll continue to get to know each one of you, and don't hesitate to be in touch. We're looking forward to working with you and amending our Constitution and beyond. When I close the meeting down, your browser will automatically be taken to the survey page. So if you could just take 5 minutes and fill it out, appreciate it very much. Have a great night, everyone. We'll talk again soon.